Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 220 of the BoxHard Podcast. First and foremost, Happy New Year. I am your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever in this New Year's podcast by Mr. Ayaz Sumra, the infamous Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
Happy New Year to you, Joey. I'm very good. Yourself?
Very good, my friend. Happy New Year to you. And like I say, to our listeners, it is going to be an interesting podcast. It's one I've been looking forward to doing for a couple of weeks because we're going to basically discuss the review part in part one, and we're going to bring in our only guest of this week's show. It's going to be another sit-down, in-depth interview with just one guest this week. It's obviously going to be, I'm sure you already know if you're listening to this, it's going to be with the free weight world champion, one of the only free weight world champions Britain has ever had. It's going to be McKenzie MBE. So that interview will be a real good one. Like I say, it's a pretty long interview. So just the one interview on this week's show, like last week, another sit-down interview. Obviously last week, the Christmas special with Andre Berto. I've heard good feedback on that. So thanks a lot for that feedback. But yeah, let's get into it. We're also going to be discussing the knockout of the year and the fighter of the year, the fight of the year, stuff like that. But yeah, let's get straight on here with the review part. Not too much, of course, to go over. There's going to be no preview part whatsoever either. Anyway, let's start at the Palais des Sports in Marseille in France. Just one fight to mention over here. Arslan Goulamirian, now 26-0. It was a successful defence for him of his WBA Super World Cruiserweight title against Constantin Bejeneru, who's now 14-1. Bejeneru actually retired on his store after 10 rounds, but Arslan Goulamirian was winning the fight. Again, these two guys, both undefeated, both kind of been shoehorned up the rankings into these big fights, and honestly, I still don't really know who they are, as embarrassing as that may sound. Moving out now, though, to the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Let's start over here with the undercard. A big upset, actually, on the undercard. Former world champion. Did he actually hold the belt for a while? I think he did before he got dethroned by Caleb Plant. I don't think that was for the vacant title. So, yeah, former world champion Jose Uzcategui, now 29-4. He was in search of win number 30. It wasn't to be at all. He took on Lionel Thompson. Lionel Thompson, a guy with a record of 21-5 going in. Uzcategui was down in the first round. Thompson was deducted a point as well at some point in the fight for holding. A major upset, like I say. Uzcategui, since losing to Caleb Plant, I don't know how many fights he's had. I think he's only had one fight and then this one here, making it two, but really hasn't looked like the most avoided fighter that he was when James DeGale vacated in order to not face him. I understand it wasn't going to be a big money fight and stuff like that, but boy oh boy, he was such a danger man, and it's very strange to actually see him losing to a guy like Lionel Thompson. Credit to him, now 22-5. Moving up the card to the bigger and better fights, I guess, on that bill. I'm going to talk now about Gervonta Davis against Yuriorkis Gamboa. Obviously, Davis going in with the perfect record, 22-0. It was for the vacant WBA World Lightweight title. Obviously, Davis came in overweight initially, but then he had a couple of hours to make the weight. He did make the weight. Yuriorkis Gamboa now 30-3. It wasn't to be his night. He was down in the second round, the 8th round, and the 12th round. He didn't really look like the beast that we come to expect to see, really, Gervonta Davis. Like I say, he did drop the guy a bunch of times, and it was crazy because Gamboa, like I say, once a real promising prospect at one stage of his career. I think he's up there in age. I think he just turned 38 a few days before the fight or something like that. So he's up there in age, but the amount of times he's been down, I think they were saying I calculated 12 times he'd been down in his career, but I'm sure the commentary said he's actually been down 14 times. That's crazy. And again, he was down another 3 times, so that means he's been knocked down 17 times. That's just nuts. But anyway, the actual fight itself, I mean, Gervonta Davis, started okay, started fast. Like I say, had Gamboa down in the second round. And when Gamboa went down, it was an odd one because he was half looking like he was going to, dare I say, quit. He didn't look comfortable in there. He was pointing at his shoe. It seemed like something was up with his shoe. Referee, I think it was Jack Reese, I felt probably should have investigated the matter a little bit further, but he didn't really seem to be bothered. He came back out, Gamboa, looking a bit weird, really. I mean, his feet were not as bouncy as they should have been. It turns out after everything, after he's been and seen a doctor, that he ruptured his Achilles. Obviously, he was able to continue right up until the 12th and final round where he got TKO'd, so credit to him. But yeah, Gervonta Davis just didn't seem like that monster that we've seen many times. Gamboa showed a much better chin than perhaps we'd all given him credit for, and perhaps Gervonta Davis has just tested the water there at lightweight and isn't the puncher that he is or has been at the lower weight. So I definitely think he should move back down to 130. If he is to stay at lightweight, though, I think that should be his ceiling. I don't think he should go up to 140. He's way too small for 140. So yeah, there's a few fights I'd like to see him involved in at lightweight. Obviously, the fights like Teofimo Lopez. I'd like to see him in there with Lomachenko, of course. I'd like to see him in there with Devin Haney, perhaps. There's lots and lots of fights I'd like to see him involved in, but whether or not they'll happen is a completely different thing. So all the best to Gervonta Davis. People won't remember, I'm guessing, too far back, but he is a friend of the show. We once had him on. He's now 23-0. He's the new WBA lightweight world champion. That makes him a 3-time world champion in 2 weight divisions. Moving up the card once again to I think this one was the co-main. Jean Pascal now 35-6 with a draw, a split decision victory for him over 12 rounds against Badou Jack, former world champion, former 2-weight world champion, now 22-3 with 3 draws. It was for the WBC silver light heavyweight title and the WBA world light heavyweight title. Jack down in the 4th round, Pascal down in the 12th round. An unbelievable fight, by the way. Again, I kind of was scoring it partially. I'll get to it. Let's start with the first round. I'd say even though the best punch of the first round was a straight right hand landed by Badou Jack, I still felt like Pascal outworked him. Pascal did get a little bit wild at times, but he looked dangerous at the same time, and he landed some great body shots as well. Definitely a Pascal round for me. Round 2, Badou Jack would fall short a lot with his attacks. He did the same in round 1, to be honest. It wasn't so much the elusiveness of Pascal. It was more the poor judge of distance from Jack, and again, for me, Pascal won the round. Jack didn't really look hurt at any point, but Pascal seemed to really move Badou Jack back when he hit him. I mean, even when he hit him on the arms, the shots looked heavy, and they'd really moved Jack back, He looked real heavy-handed in there, but like I say, Jack wasn't hurt at all. He just seemed to be struggling to work out the awkward style of Pascal. In the 3rd round, again, for me, I'd say Pascal won the round. Jack did seem to momentarily hurt Pascal late in the round, and Pascal had to hold, but then, he managed to actually finish quite well, Pascal. And, Jack's good work, the moments he was having, they were just few and far between at that point. The more consistent of the two was definitely Pascal for me. In the 4th round, it started off as a big round for Badou Jack. He was beating Pascal up, he was hurting him, but then literally in the last 10 seconds of the round, he gets caught with a looping right hook to the temple, and he completely was out on his feet. He really lost his balance, and down he went. A 10-8 round there, which is a big swing, because like I say, Jack was probably comfortably winning that round until that shot landed. He did get back up and the bell rang straight away, so he kind of got saved by the bell. The fifth round for me, another round for Pascal. The sixth round, I actually gave it to Jack. I think that was the first round I'd given him at that point. It was a close round. I felt like it probably could have gone either way. It was a little bit of a sympathy kind of round, actually, giving it to Jack. It really could have gone either way. Round 7, another close round. I was edging it to Jack, but then again, Pascal just finished quite strong in the last kind of 10 seconds or so, and he might have just about snatched it, so I did end up giving it to Pascal, but the pace definitely dropped from Pascal. He did seem a little bit tired to me at that point. Round 8, great round for Badou Jack. The straight shots were working for him again and again. He also had great success at one point with his left and right hooks when he had Pascal on the ropes. I was thinking, could the tide be turning at that point? It seemed to, I guess. 9th round was a Jack round. The 10th round, my stream crashed, so I didn't see that one at all. The 11th round I gave to Badou Jack, and the 12th round, like I say, a 10-8 round for Badou Jack. Down went Pascal. It was a real heavy knockdown. He got back up, but his head just seemed super glued, and he couldn't move it at all. He couldn't get out of the way of Jack's punches. So a big 10-8 round there for Jack at the very last part of the fight. But that 10th round that I didn't score, when I totaled it all up, if I would have scored it to Badou Jack, it would have been a draw, 113 on my card. And if I scored it to Jean Pascal, then it would have been 114-112. I believe that's how it ended up. So I actually had it quite similar to the judges. Obviously, it ended up, like I say, in a split decision. 2 judges had it 114-112 to Jean Pascal, just like I would have had it if I gave him that round that I missed, and the other judge had it 114-112 to Badou Jack. I didn't see that. I was trying to score it as fair as possible, and I definitely felt like either Jean Pascal deserved to win, or at the very best for Badou Jack it would have been a draw. Obviously Badou Jack already been on the receiving end of a few dodgy decisions. He didn't need a 4th draw, but unfortunately it ended with a loss for him. I actually thought he'd win the fight quite comfortably on points before the fight, but like I say, this boxing game is very, very hard to get your predictions right in such brilliant fights, and it was a brilliant fight. It was a late contender actually for Fight of the Year, which we'll be getting onto in part 2. But that's it for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 1, the final thing to do is to welcome our one and only guest on this unofficial New Year podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former freeweight world champion. It is, of course, Mr. Duke McKenzie MBE. Duke, welcome to the show.
Good evening, champ. How are you?
Very good, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks.
Great to hear
really
it.
Well.
Great to hear it, Duke. So I want to start off just really with a typical question as an opener, really. How did you get into boxing in the very beginning, Duke? Obviously, the family's quite famous for the boxing. Tell me how it started.
Yeah, just already fell in. Older brother started. I'm one of 7 kids, and eldest brother started. He got into boxing through his best friend at school, a guy called Frankie Lucas, who went on to challenge Tony Simpson as a middleweight, very successful middleweight. Frankie Lucas also represented, I think it was up Trinidad or St Kitts or Jamaica in the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games. So anyway, Frankie started boxing, and then a good friend of Clinton's, and then Clinton started, and then Winston started, and then I started. Dudley started, and then I started. It was like the blind leading the blind. If Clinton would have been if he had done ballet, or if he'd have been a pub owner, or if he'd have been a policeman or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, we would have just all followed him. It really was the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, like a domino effect almost. And obviously, Duke, you boxed as an amateur between. When did you start boxing as an amateur?
I started at the age of 13 at the Sir Philip Game Amateur Boxing Club in Croydon. Boxed there for 3 years, 2 or 3, about 2 years, sorry. And then that closed down. The Sir Philip Game Amateur Boxing Club closed down, and then I went to the Battersea Amateur Boxing Club, and that's where things just took a massive turn for me, really, for the better. I was okay. I was, I don't know. I was just an okay amateur. I wasn't good. I wasn't bad. Well, no, I was quite bad as an amateur. but my coach in the amateurs was a guy called Tony Chapman, excellent coach. Won a lot with my brother Dudley. I mean, he made Dudley an 8-time All England national champion. Dudley went to the first World Junior Championships in Yokohama in Japan, 1979. Clinton went to the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, boxed Sugar and Leonard in the quarterfinals. Yeah. Winston also, my other brother Winston was an England international. All my brothers were brilliant amateurs. There's nothing they didn't win. And then there was me, just sort of followed suit really. Didn't really want to fight, just liked to be around my brothers. That's the God's honest truth. I love to be around. Wherever they was, there was a buzz, and that's what I wanted. I just wanted to be around them, so I just followed them.
Oh, that's excellent, man. And obviously the professional journey began November 1982. Charlie Brown was the opponent. I mean, you made light work of him. You got him out there in the first round. Can you remember what it was like, if there was nerves before that fight, and if you were happy or sad after the fight because it ended so quickly?
I was as nervous as Charlie Brown going into the ring, I promise you. But Charlie... to be honest with you, I think his backside fell out really quick because he probably thought he was fighting somebody that was better than what he was. Bear in mind, this is my professional debut, and I think he was really apprehensive and really nervous, and probably that just added to the impact of the shot that I did catch him. If I caught him with a body shot, and he just folded on me, and that was it really. Don't really remember too much about Charlie. I never spoke to him after the fight or before the fight. Just one of them things, really. Just on, beginning of my journey.
And again, on that same card, I mean, obviously you made your debut with obviously Clinton fighting on the card. Charlie Magri, who you'd eventually go on to fight, was on the card, and Frank Bruno, a young Frank Bruno back then as well. So good company straight away. I believe it was your third fight, if I'm not mistaken, where you started to box in the States a lot. How did that come about, Duke? And do you believe that those times you were fighting away from home, you were able to gain some kind of important experience from it at the time?
I gained so much experience. I gained so much knowledge from... Mickey Duff just took me on this whirlwind trip all over America. I don't really know why. He just liked me and I liked him. But we got on really, really well. And I think he just liked having me around. But Mickey was also manager to Cornelius Bowes Redwoods, who was his first world champion, I believe, 9 stone 4 junior lightweight WBC champion. And I got on really well with Bowser as well. And like I say, we just went on this sort of whistle-stop trip, really. Mickey, I don't really know what Mickey saw in me. I don't. I'm glad he did, whatever he did see, because I'd seen every manager in the country up until that point, and they'd all turned me down. None of them would even, in actual fact, a few of the big names now wouldn't even give me an interview, didn't even want to see me. But Mickey saw something in me, and like I said, I was very persistent at the time because he wanted to give me like a caretaker manager originally, but I wouldn't have it. And then, Mickey said that there was a lack of opponents, that we could actually potentially face in Britain because I was a black flyweight. Those were his words. He said, you're a black flyweight. He said, you don't sell tickets. He said, we ain't going to get any fights where we are. He said, So Mickey spent a lot of time in America in those days. Well, he did. He spent probably 6 months there and 6 months here. It was like that, really. And so he took me everywhere. I think our first fight was Vegas. Then we went to, I think, Atlantic City, Los Angeles, Reno, back to Vegas, I think. And then I think we went to, we had a couple of fights on the continent after that.
Yeah, it was quite a trip. I mean, let's get to June 1985. At this time, obviously, your record's 10-0, 7 KOs before boxing Danny Flynn for the British title. Now, obviously, Danny Flynn had never been... he'd been stopped once. It was in 8 rounds to Hugh Russell. And then you stopped Flynn in half the time Russell did. It took you 4 rounds. You had him down 6 times. Talk us through that fight and how it felt at that stage to become the champion of Britain.
Well, I wanted to win so badly because I just wanted to emulate my older brother at this point, Clinton, who was already British welterweight champion, and I was quite inspired by Clint as a kid growing up because we just followed him. We was like his fan club, like his in-house fan club. Well, me and the rest of my brothers. It was me, Dudley, Winston, we'd all, whatever Clint thought, we just followed him basically. But I always wanted to emulate Clint, and because when I think I was like sort of 19, 20 when Clint first won the British Championship, and I sort of got a glimpse of a Lonsdale belt. I just thought that I hadn't seen anything like it. It was unbelievable, to be honest with you. And I still think it's the best looking belt.
Definitely.
Although I actually own 3 World Championship belts, but I don't think there's another belt like a Lonsdale belt. It's an unbelievable belt to own, and Clinton went on to own 2 of these belts outright. I think he should have probably had 3 Lonsdale belts outright, but the Boxing Board of Control brought some ruling in saying that you couldn't actually own 3 belts. So I think you have to give one back. But anyway, listen, that was my incentive. Clinton was like an incentive to win the British Championship. And I knew that going in against Danny Flynn, I knew I had a 50-50 chance of winning the fight because of the faith and confidence that Mickey Duff had installed in me. And I knew he wouldn't have done that if he didn't think I had something. So I was reasonably confident going into the fight. My only sort of drawback going into the Danny Flynn fight was it was scheduled for 12. I'd never been 12. I hadn't been 8 at that point, I don't think. And I just think I look at the Flynn fight. It really was my sort of first step or my first sort of taste. Even if I'd have lost to Danny Flynn, I'd have come again. Do you see what I mean? Because there was a lack of competition in the flyweight division, regardless. I think Kelvin Smart had vacated the British title up until that point, and I'd sparred Kelvin Smart before the Danny Flynn fight, way before the Danny Flynn fight. Well, in actual fact, before I actually turned pro, I'd sparred Kelvin Smart and just sort of held my own, I thought. And then, anyway, so I had the Flynn fight, and hey presto, become a British champion. So I was, quite proud.
And of course, you had the 2 wins after that, and then came the Charlie Magri fight for the European flyweight title. Now, you talk about, it was quite difficult, as you said, being a black flyweight back then, having to go on the road to the States. Do you feel like the win here against Charlie Magri was kind of the breakthrough win at that stage?
Yeah, that was like my, that was like, how can I explain that fight, the Magri fight? Well, listen, unbeknownst to Charlie, Mickey had me in America sparring, and I'd had some absolute belting sparring partners in America, and getting me ready for the Magri fight. And then also, Mickey got me some sparring over here. He got me this Puerto Rican kid to come over to spar with me, a guy called Juan Muriel, who for probably about the best part of like 10 days to 2 weeks, this kid literally punched me from pillar to post. And he was, again, he sort of replicated the Magri style. So that was like my coming of age fight, the Magri fight. Again, I don't think it would have been detrimental had I have lost, because then I would have looked at it and said, so, okay, it's like a learning curve. I've lost like a former world champion, reigning European champion, A, B, C, D. But again, although it was probably on paper a fight I wasn't supposed to win, I was very quietly confident, and I had a lot of belief in what my brother was telling me throughout the whole of my life, Dudley. Dudley was like a massive inspiration to me, and Dudley was like the catalyst of everything I ever did. All that I've ever been, all that I am, even to this day, I owe to my brother Dudley, because I looked up to him so much. And if Dudley told me I could have beat Mike Tyson, I'd have believed him. If he'd have told me I couldn't have beaten Charlie Magri, I would have believed him. But when the Magri fight was made, he said to me, it's not a problem. It really wasn't. And like I say, Mickey had got me in America and got me prepared for it. And I had a great coach, a guy called Colin Smith, who trained me for all of my senior amateur fights, where I started to just do, very well. I did quite well with Colin, to be honest with you. We just had a really, really good bond, the father figure type, the best friend type, the mentor type sort of relationship. And Colin really fancied the Magri fight big time, because when the fight was made, he said to me, I'll never forget it. He sat me down, as Colin did. He was very sort of methodical in his approach to when he spoke to me. He'd sit me down, put his arm around me like a dad, and just said, McKenzie, he said, I really fancy this one, son. He said, we're going to do it. And that was it. I didn't really panic or just, it was something to look forward to, wasn't it? The Charlie Magri fight for me, because, like I say, Charlie had lost to Socha Talada, or lost his world championships to Socha Talada, but then Charlie did something which no British fighter was doing at that point. He defended he went to Franco Cherki's backyard and destroyed him in about 2 or 3 rounds and booked the European title from him, which, like I say, that was unheard of at that point. A British fighter going abroad and knocking somebody out or winning the European title. And then he come back to defend the European against me for what was then the British Championship. So it was a dual headliner at Wembley Arena. And, it was like my coming of age fight, really. But I'd been in America, right? And I spent a lot of time at Johnny Tocco's gym in downtown Vegas. And Johnny Tocco was this real, like the Mickey film, you see, in the Rocky film, you see that little guy Mickey with the hat on. And well, Johnny Tocco was, I promise, he was this kind of character. He ate, slept, walked, talked, drunk, boxing. And he had this little downtown gym in Vegas. And that's where one day I was in this gym, right? And there was like Hector Camacho. These guys were coming at different times, mind you, throughout the day, like to train, right? So it was like Hector Camacho, he'd come in and train. Then he'd leave. Then Adrian Rosario would come in. He'd do his stint. He'd leave. Livingstone Bramble would come in. He'd come and do his workout. John McGarvey would go and do his workout. Bose Redwood would go in and do his workout. And in between all these guys training, because all these guys were fighting one another in like a bit of a round-robin type thing, in between all these guys were training, all the other big stars would like put in an appearance. Not training, they just come in and show their face. Sugar Ray Leonard popped in. Marvin Hagler popped in. Evander Holyfield popped in. It was like being a kid in a sweet shop for me. I just couldn't believe the amount. Pernell Whitaker was there as well. I just couldn't believe the amount of top flight guys I was looking at. And like I said, it was like being a kid in a sweet shop. It's ridiculous. But like I say, this was all like a learning curve for me. So you can imagine, I'm like sort of 21 years old, I think, 21, 22 years old, wide-eyed, open-mouthed, watching all of these superstars. Well, they weren't superstars then, but they'd go on to become superstars. And I tell you what, I had a really good conversation with Evander Holyfield and Pernell Whitaker before they'd won anything. And it was just, it was an amazing experience. It really was.
It sounds unbelievable. Like I say, the names you're reeling off there, real big guys in the sport, of course. And just to touch on that Magri fight, obviously the towel came in round 5, and that was it. You became the champion of Europe, the European champion. You defended the title successfully next time out against Gian Piero Pino over 12 rounds. Then you beat
in his backyard, yeah.
And then, of course, you beat the former world champion Juan Herrera on points over 10. Then defended it again successfully, the European, against Agapito Gomez. He got him out of there in 2, which again was real impressive. And fast forwarding then to October the 5th, 1988, a night I'm sure you'll never ever forget. Talk me through the fight and what do you remember of the night itself, Duke?
So the Rolando Bohol fight was a real test of my character and a real test of nerves. When we'd been trying to get the Socha Talada fight for some time, and it just didn't come about for one reason or another. I think namely because Mickey wouldn't pay him the money they was asking for. I was trying to hold him to ransom, like, pretty much, and Mickey Duff is like he wasn't open that from anybody, so the Talada fight didn't come about. But I don't really think they fancied it at the time anyway, because I was very much on the ascendancy, very much on the way up, and I think Chisara was having a lot of weight-making problems and one thing and another. So anyway, that fight didn't happen, and so he switched his attentions to the IBF champion Rolando Bohol, who nobody had heard of, and Bohol had never travelled outside of the Philippines. So there was a lot of things going in my favour. Then obviously if the fight was maybe like in the States or, God forbid, in his backyard in the Philippines, it might have been a different story. But he travelled and he came over on a cold winter's night to the Wembley Conference Centre, June the 5th, 1988. It was my trainer's wedding anniversary the night before, and I vowed to him that I was going to win the fight, although I didn't believe it at the time. I said to him, Smith, I used to call him Smith, I said, I'm going to win this one for you. This will be your anniversary present. And he was confident I would win. Mickey Duff was confident I would win. I had a really good sparring. I sparred, do you remember John Hyland?
Yes, yes.
I sparred a guy called John Hyland, who was an outstanding amateur and a very decent professional, and he was a southpaw. I sparred John Hyland for probably about a good sort of 4 or 5 weeks before this fight. Southpaw, just all southpaw sparring. Didn't have any lefties at all, and he got me in, really good shape. When I really held my own against John Hyland, although he was a bantamweight and I was a flyweight. But he didn't take any liberties anyway. He's a lovely guy. And we sparred me, and I was ready, really, for the fight. And all I kept saying to myself was, when you do your tick box, I just knew that there was no stone unturned. I never cheated in camp. I was making weight okay. And, had I not have won the fight again, I just feel... I tried to take the pressure off myself by saying to myself, I'd come again, So the whole fight, I just talked myself through the fight round by round, basically. I was just happy at one point. On the morning of the fight, when I was I had a little bit of a meltdown, a little bit of a cry, because all boxers go through the same process, really. Nobody doesn't ever suffer from fear or any sort of anxiousness, or, you always have a certain amount of self-doubt, but I kept saying to myself, if I can just get through to the end of the 12th, if I can just get through to the end of the 12th round, if I can just get through to the end of the fight, I wouldn't have done myself any disservice, or, I'd have done 12 rounds, I'd have gone the distance with a world champion, and if I've lost, then I've lost to a world champion, but if I've won, then then I'm world champion. Also, what helped me was the IBF was the only governing body at that time that was having the weigh-in the night before. So, I'd weigh in at I think it was about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock the evening before, ate my face off, rehydrated, slept a lot for on the morning of the fight. I had my breakfast, did my normal ritual, tried my kit on, still doubted myself, and then Dudley gave me my pep talk throughout the day, because like I said, Dudley was my conscience. Yeah. Dudley gave me my pep talk, talked me through the fight, told me how I was going to win it, followed his instruction, followed my coach's instructions, because he'd always set out a game plan as to how he was going to win fights. And I just followed that, and then round by round, you see, what I found in all of my fights, even now when I look back at a lot of my fights, because I like to watch a lot of my fights now, and my coach taught me to jab so well, and that's my best shot. And if you look at any of my fights, you'll see, even in the fights that I lost, I have a lot of success with my jab, and this is how I break Bo Hold down. It was a little bit shorter than me, and I always like guys that were just a little bit shorter than me, because I knew I'd get him at some point with the jabs, and I just break him down round after round, just with the jab, and then I just start introducing, I hit him with a lot of single shots, like single jabs to begin with, and single crosses, but then once I find my range, I can start putting my combinations together. And I've always been reasonably patient in fights. I've never been one to rush, so I didn't in the Bowl fight, and then I break him down round after round, and I do the fight in what we call quarters. I do, like the first 4 rounds, and then we go from 4 to 8, and then from 8 to 12. Do it in that sort of a sequence. Sorry, it's thirds, isn't it? My mistake. So it's four rounds. But I mean, in 4 rounds that's a quarter. But if you break it down, it's like in thirds, because it's like 4, 4, and 4. So for the first 4 rounds, I kept saying to myself, well, I'm a little bit behind. But I think at the end of the third round, at the end of the second round, I'm fed up with running, because I run like a thief in the night for the first 2 rounds, because I know that's when he's going to be his most strongest. So I give him the first 2 rounds, and then at the end of the third, I get fed up with running, and I just think, well, I'll give him a little test, and I do. And then, to my amazement, I felt as physically as strong as he was. And then that gave me a lot of confidence for the 4th round. And then I buzz him, I think, in about the 4th round. I think I buzz him again about the 6th round, and so my confidence is starting to grow now. And then I start to hurt him around round 8, and then he just starts to go dead. He just goes dead. He just goes really tired. So I think he was like really tight at the weight, and then I just sort of start to pile it on and pick him up more with the jab, hitting him with more jabs, and I'm hitting him with plenty of jabs, and I'm following through with the right hand. And then I start switching my attack from head to body. And then I hit a really good body shot at the end of the 10th round. End of the 10th round, I hit a really good body shot, and it just knocked the stuffing out of him. And then I just kept saying to myself, you got another 6 minutes. I'm going to be, the fight's going to be over, and I got a chance. And he just couldn't go with the pace at the end of the fight, and he just fell apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was it. I'm world champion.
You absolutely did. Like I say, you became the first man to stop him. Funny enough, it's going to be his 54th birthday on Christmas Day, but that's another story. But yeah,
that's another story.
You were 21-0, the new IBF flyweight champion of the world. Did life change at all at that point for you?
Rapidly. I was getting invites to places like I've never been before, like Stringfellows, and there's one or two sort of like television appearances I was doing, and I'm just a normal kid from Croydon, South London, not used to that kind of high life, and it blew my mind a little bit, to be honest with you. It did. It really took me aback, and I think it's the old sort of adage. You sort of take your eyes off the prize a little bit, or I did anyway. I took my eyes off the prize a little bit, but I was world champion, and I was very proud of being a world champion. But I was like, I don't know. It was quite a surreal emotion. It was, the emotions that I was going through. They were very surreal, because I can remember when I was going after beating Bohol, when I was going back to the changing room with Dudley, and he had his hand on my shoulder, and he said to me, he used to call me little man. He said to me, little man. He said to me, we need to really enjoy tonight. He said, because it's not going to last. And I couldn't really believe or understand what he was talking about at that time. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I said to him, what the fuck hell are you talking about? I said, I've just won the world championship. I'm like world champion. He said, it ain't going to last. He said, you need to just enjoy it while you can. And, we need to go out and celebrate tonight like we're a champion, which we did. And it was just, like I say, it was beautiful. It was like bittersweet, really. It was like bittersweet. It really was. But, and I was never really one for going out. And when I say, I started going out, I was never one for the high life. There was never any drink, any drugs, any rock and roll. I'm not that kind of guy. But, a late night for me would have been about 11 o'clock. But, I was going out sometimes till about sort of 1 o'clock in the morning. And, listen, it was like, it was a nice experience. It was a lovely experience. But no sooner I'd sort of won the title, and then this is where it also went a little bit wrong. I can't say it went wrong. My brother Dudley was getting married, right? And so I'm in Barbados like 2 weeks before they've announced my. So I've beaten Tony DeLuca. So after the DeLuca fight, we've moved on to the McCauley fight. Now, I looked at McCauley's record, and I'd looked at some of his fights, and he'd been on the deck something like 17 or 18 times. And I really thought I had nothing to worry about. So I'm in Barbados 2 weeks before the McCauley fight, and I'm like stone overweight. You've seen it in like Raging Bull. He gets back, he's a fat slob. Right, and I get back, and I get on the scales. But I've been training while I was in Barbados, because I've been running every day. I've been shadow boxing. I did all my training accordingly before I went, and my coach pleaded with me not to go. But Dudley's my best friend, as well as being my brother, and I was his best man, as he was my best man at my wedding. So there was no way I wasn't going. Do you understand? There was no way. Dudley said to me, look, little man, he said, we're getting married. You're my best man. He said to me, I understand if you're not going to come, because obviously, we got this fight. But he said, I need you there. He didn't say, can I make it? Once he said to me, I need you there, that was it. I was going. And wild horses wouldn't have kept me from going, because like I say, we were more than brothers. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I got over to Barbados. I was still running. I didn't think I'd have any problem with McCauley whatsoever, because, he'd been bounced off the canvas so many times. And I thought, we're the same height as well. He's 5'7". He'll have the same weight problems as I had. But it turned out that he didn't. It turned out on the night he was actually better than I thought he was. It turned out on the night he made the weight better than what I did. And when I got to the official weigh-in, I was still 3/4 of a pound overweight, so I had to skip the weight off. And then when I got to the weigh-in, Mickey Duff looked at me and he said to me, "Mackenzie," he went, "Fuck me," he said, "you look like a black pair of braces." I was so drawn and so gaunt looking. And then I went, shit, I thought, I'm in trouble now. Because if my manager's saying to me, I don't look right, then something's wrong, basically. And McCauley had me hurt from the first round. He had me hurt from the first round. He absolutely destroyed me with a body shot. And then he started to batter me around the head. And I just thought, shit, I'm in trouble. And I just thought, I just went straight into survival mode. I don't know if you ever watched this fight, but I just go into survival mode. And from the second round, that's all I'm trying to do is to survive. Because I know the title's gone, but I'm just thinking, I can't get knocked out by this guy. I just can't. Or I can't get stopped by this guy. I just can't. And like I say, I'm in survival mode, and I've lost the fight. But to be honest with you, it came as a relief losing to Dave McCauley, because I was struggling so bad to make weight. I'd actually had one or two blackouts trying to make the weight, not eating, not drinking, not rehydrating. Yeah, I was going. It was an absolute nightmare. But they knew I was having problems making weight, and they done a number on me basically. And listen, I can look back now and say to myself, well, did I do the right thing? And if I had to do it all again, exactly the same way, I would.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, Duke, because I like to ask this to a lot of fighters, did the first loss make you or break you? The way you're sort of saying, because a lot of people, obviously, it breaks them they're destroyed, and then they got some added hunger to just come back and give it something, give it more, give it 110%. But to say like it was a relief, I'm wondering, cause it doesn't seem like it affected you that bad, or am I wrong? Am I interpreting that wrong?
It never affected me at all. I promise you, I stayed up. This is not a lie, and I haven't made this up. And it's not like I've had time to think about what I'm going to say to you, because if you speak to anybody that knows me, they'll tell you this is exactly how I answer that question. It came as a relief because I'd gone without living like a normal person for so long in my whole career. When you have to make weight, when weight becomes your whole focus, when weight becomes your god and not the fight, then you're in trouble. And I suffered so badly making weight. I mean, even to this day, I'll go to bed now every night. You can ask my wife if you don't believe me. I go to bed now with like an orange juice and a Mars bar or a couple of biscuits. No, just in case. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I can reach over and grab it and fill my face. I eat roast dinners or like rice and peas at ridiculous hours of the night. I can't go to bed hungry. I'm one of those guys. This is how boxing will any boxer will tell you that it scars you mentally when it comes to food. It does. I'm a glutton for food, and I did some crazy things when trying to make weight for fights, particularly in the McCauley fight. And like I say, but my luck ran out. But like I say, when I look back on my career now, it came as such a relief, and losing to him at that point, it done me a favour, because as you know my career and what I went on to achieve, and I just think I'd love to fought him again at bantamweight or even at super bantamweight. So it's the old age story, isn't it? He won the fight, he won the battle, but I won the war, because I just think, he only won a world title in one weight division, and I did it in 3 weight divisions. And I think I've arguably, when I'm asked, I've arguably probably beaten a better caliber of fighter later on in my career in different weight divisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't begrudge Dave McCauley in no way, shape or form. He's a fine champion. As he went on to be, I think he defended the title 4 or 5 times after beating me. So if he looks at me and thinks to himself, you know what, I beat Duke McKenzie, he was a good fighter, then I'm pleased. I'm pleased for him. I really am. I never hold any. I lost 6 times in my career, 6 or 7 times in my career, and I don't begrudge or hold a grudge against any of the guys that beat me. And there's only one fight in my whole career that I think I possibly could have won, but I didn't get a decision. But we'll go on to that in a minute. But like I say, I don't hold grudges, and like I say, I think he done me a favour, because my name's in the record books and his isn't. Well, it's a fact, isn't it? It's a fact. When you talk about, guys that have won world titles at 3 weights or more, you're not going to hear Dave McCauley's name there, are you? Because he only won world titles in 1 weight division.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and that's not sour grapes that's not sour grapes on my part. It's a fact.
Yeah,
it's a fact. So, listen, like I say, I think I went on to be a better calibre fighter. When I'm throwing on all cylinders, I think I could hold my own with anybody. I really do. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And like I say, after that fight, obviously, you made the move to bantamweight. Couple fights, obviously, at the lower level, wins over David Moreno and Guillermo Flores, and then, of course, for the vacant EBU European bantamweight title, the loss against Terry Jacob. Obviously, losing a world title, there's no real shame in it. You said you're relieved. You move up a weight because making that weight was a struggle, and then to lose for the European.
Yeah.
Did that almost kind of make you think perhaps this move up to bantam wasn't a good idea? Where were you left after that loss?
No. The Jacob fight made me. Fighters talk about their career-defining fights and fights that actually made them. That loss made me, I promise you. Okay. It's the first time in my life I've been decked. It's the first time I've been hurt in a fight so bad I wanted to cry. It's the first time in my life that I actually wanted to quit in a fight. This guy punched me. He hit me so many times. I'm not joking. I really thought I was surrounded. I don't know if you've ever seen the fight. And he was cut so bad. I think after the fight, he had something like either 11 or 17 stitches. He bled everywhere, but they patched him up and just kept throwing him out. And in the end, he kind of broke my heart because I hit him with so many clean shots and so many foul shots. I hit him with the head, I hit him with my elbow, I hit him low, and he's like Freddy Krueger. He just keeps coming after me, and I can't stop him. It's just ridiculous. You've got to watch the fight sometime. You'll see what I mean. It's the first time I'd ever experienced like real hostility because I fight him at a place called I think it's called the Fontenay-sous-Bois in France. And there's like 10,000 screaming French guys, and some of them were actually spitting at me on my ring walk. And, they were ringing me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and banging on my hotel door. And, you get to the gym and the gym's locked because you want to check your weight and there's no scales and your doctor's late and everything that could have gone wrong in that fight did go wrong. And they really done a number on me. But it was such a great experience, the whole fight. That's out of my 42 fights, 41, 42 fights I had, including all of my world title fights, including all of my world title defences. I never had a harder fight than that.
Okay,
that
answers the question I was going to ask later on about who was the toughest fight. So yeah.
Terry Jacob, hands down.
Definitely. And obviously, like I say, after that, you take on Peter Buckley. Now, this one's an interesting one because Peter Buckley obviously went on to have 300 fights. He was only ever stopped 10 times, and you were 2 of those 10 because, again, later on you'd have the rematch. But back to the chronological order, after that you go on to beat Julio Blanco and Chris Clarkson before making a run at the other world title, obviously, Gabby Canizales. Again, he was a... was he a two-time? He was a 2-time world champion, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 2-time bantamweight.
Two-time bantamweight world champion. You shut him out over 12. That made you a 2-time world champion. Talk me through that one, and of course how it felt to win a world title for the second time.
Well, again, I was so confident going into that fight because Mickey Duff. When I first turned pro, Mickey Duff said to me, "You're a bantamweight. You're not a flyweight. You're a bantamweight, and we'll start the career at bantamweight." And I insisted that I was a flyweight. That's why I stayed at that weight division for so long. But Mickey said to me, he's made the Canizales fight, and he said to me, the fight's going to be over in this country at the Elephant and Castle. He said it's going to be a Sunday night. Mickey said to me, after I'd lost to the McCauley fight, he said to me, after I'd lost to Jacob, he said to me, the only thing that beat me in the Jacob fight was inactivity. I think I hadn't boxed for something like 15, 16 months going into that fight, and I was a little bit rusty, if truth be known. So, but he got me those 3 fights back to back: Peter Buckley, Chris Clarkson, and Julio Blanco. And if you look at my career, those fights were all about like 6-8 weeks apart. Yeah. So going into the Canizales fight, I was so sharp because I'd had so much activity, and all I said to myself was, if I stand still, this guy's going to knock me out. He had more knockouts on his record than I had in my whole career. And I thought to myself, and because he was, trying to sound me out at the weigh-in, and I knew, this saying, if your opponent starts to try and sound you out and they start bad-mouthing you, it means they're shitting themselves. And I kind of sensed with Canizales, things weren't right because of the way he was acting at the weigh-in, trying to stare me down and, I'm going to knock you out and you're this and you're not strong and all the usual shit. And I was never really one for buying into that kind of thing. I'm just a quiet guy. I do my fighting in the ring, and for 12 weeks, no, it wasn't. It was 16 weeks. My mistake. For 16 weeks, I didn't go out of my house unless I was going to the gym. I didn't get up in the morning unless I was going to do my run in the morning. I didn't go to a cinema. I didn't go to the shops. I didn't go to a supermarket. I didn't do anything that I wasn't supposed to do. And for 12 weeks, all I did was ate, slept, drunk, walked, and talked Canizales. And I think he in his mind's eye, I was just another payday because he was this big puncher and I was quite weak in his eyes. And I kid you not, I'd almost gone into like method mode, as like what actors do, because I kept saying to myself, if I go to the shops or I have sex or I have a late night, or it's cheating, and if I cheat, I'm gonna lose. That was my mindset. So for these 16 weeks, I ate, slept, walked, I went to bed every day. I kid you not, I went to bed every day at 7 o'clock. I was up every morning at 5 o'clock, doing my run or going to the gym. And I'd go, and after I'd been to the gym, and I got home, and I had something to eat, I went straight to bed. I'd go to bed even when I wasn't tired. I just made sure I was in my bed. So that if after the fight I'd lost, there was no question I could ask myself, did you run right? Did you sleep right? Did you have sex? Was you going out? Did you make weight? Once, like I say, I ticked so many boxes, I knew that if I stood still, I'd get knocked out. So the plan was not to stand still. And for 12 rounds, I was so fit anyway. I was running like 6-8 miles every day on a weekday. On a weekend, I was running anything from 10 to 15 miles. I felt superhuman at that point. I really did. I was so fit and so strong, and I don't stop moving in the Canizales fight, and I jab his head off.
Would you say that was the point in your career where you felt, your prime, I guess?
Yeah, that was my absolute prime. Yeah. And you'll never know what it is to be able to get up in the morning while you're in training and have breakfast and have lunch and have an evening meal. And Mickey Duff used to say to me, a happy fighter is a good fighter. If you can eat and drink what you like, you're happy. And if you've got ability, it will come out. And that's exactly how that fight panned out. I was eating 3 squares every day, not like the McCauley fight. I'd have like 1 meal in the morning, and that was me. That was my breakfast, like a poached egg on toast, and just live off water and salad. But I was having like a fried breakfast for the Canizales fight every morning. I was having like a proper lunch at lunchtime, like a salad or whatever, because I couldn't have too much because obviously I was going to the gym. Then I'd come back and I'd have like a proper full dinner and drink on top of that, and another drink before I went to bed. So I was happy going into the Canizales fight, and it showed in the fight.
Yeah, it certainly did. And like I say, your first defence came to Cesar Soto, who again would also go on to become a world champion himself in the future. You beat him, a very tough Mexican, unanimously over 12.
Yeah.
Again, you can interrupt me at any point if you want to add something to it. The title defence next was against former world title challenger Wilfredo Vargas. You stop him in 8 at the Royal Albert Hall in March 1992. And then, of course, you're back there just 7 weeks later. This time, it wouldn't end well. A third first round KO loss to Rafael Devao, down from a jab initially, but you got back up and ended taking a straight right followed by a left hook. No one really knew much about Devao, obviously, before that. I watched it again the other day. A massive upset. Were you simply caught cold, Duke? Not trying to throw an excuse your way, but it seemed like that.
No, I wasn't caught cold. I had a really bad cold just before the fight. The week before the fight, I'd had a really bad cold, and I went to Mickey Duff's office on the Sunday before, and I said, Mick, I'm not right. Pull me out the fight. He said, I can't pull you out the fight, dude. He said, I just sold the fight coast to coast back to America. He said to me, don't worry about this kid. He said, you'll beat him. He said, it's no big deal. He said, you'll beat this kid. He said, I'm going to keep you nice and active, and I just thought, well, I'll beat him because I'm world champion. So I never took him lightly or anything like that, but I just walked onto one. He threw a straight right, missed that, and then he switched it into like a jab. And as he threw the jab, he turned his shoulder over it, and it just caught me right on the chin, and I just went over like a sack of shit. And I just wasn't right. I didn't recover. I just didn't recover. Anyway, and that was it. That was it. The fight was over. Yeah, it was one of them. It was like a very surreal moment. It's like everything went in slow motion. You know, like when you see these psycho films, and the psycho's just about to stab the woman in the shower, but before she gets stabbed, she turns around and she glimpses him, and then he's like about 50 meters away or 50 yards away, and you get that sort of tunnel vision. Yeah, you get that sort of tunnel vision. Well, as he hit me on the chin, his arms just seemed to get longer and longer and longer. Because I was trying to fall onto him, to be honest, but his arms were so long, and I just went over like I said, I was gone, and that was it. The title was gone. But it was a very. I was very upset. I was very sad. I was very hurt by the loss. But Dudley had a lot of confidence in me, and Dudley always said to me, you know, when you can't make weight or you lose a fight, we're just going to keep moving up till our luck runs out. So that was the next inevitable step for me. This is the only time I thought I had a point to prove in the whole of my career was when I boxed Jesse Benavidez. It wasn't the Bahol fight or the Canizales fight. It was the Benavidez fight, because I knew everybody would be looking at me thinking, he's washed up, he's finished, he ain't going to beat Jesse Benavidez. It was Ring Magazine Fighter of the Month that month. I think they'd only lost one in about 22, something like that. And Southpaw, another sort of ex-Kronk fighter.
He'd lost one in 36, I think it was.
There you go. So he'd lost one in 36. I'd actually watched Benavidez destroy a guy called Jesus Salud. They called him the Hawaiian Punch. And Salud was a really good puncher. And I watched Benavidez wipe the floor with this guy. I mean, if you ever get a chance, you need to watch it, because if you like a southpaw, I love a southpaw because I was brought up with southpaws. Bloody was a southpaw. Coogan was a southpaw. So I was brought up with southpaws, and I just kept saying to myself, I can beat this guy. I'm gonna prove to myself that, you know, what happened with Del Valle was a fluke. I'm going to prove to Mickey Duff, because I kind of got the feeling that Mickey never thought I could. He wasn't 100% sure I could beat this kid. I'm sure of that. But I just kept saying to myself, I've got a point to prove that I'm not washed up. I'm not over the hill. And the difference between me and Benavidez on the night was one simple factor. It wasn't I was better than him, and I didn't think he was better than me. I just wanted it more. I just wanted to win so badly. And he wasn't prepared to dig in and really bite down and really, you know, save his title. He kind of, I think from maybe like the 10th round, he kind of had this look of resignation on his face, because I was just there, and he never expected me to be there, because I'd lost the bantamweight title fight in such dramatic fashion. He thought he'd get me out of there a lot quicker, because he was a really good fighter. Benavidez, I rate the guy. Even to this day, I still rate him. I still think he's a top fighter. But I just wanted to win so badly. I wanted to win, you know, so much. And I did. I pulled it off.
Yeah, you certainly did once again. But yeah, just to to get the timeline right. Obviously, after the Rafael Deval fight, you moved up in weight. And again, this is where the Peter Buckley rematch comes in. This time again, Buckley retires on his stall with a shoulder injury. But there's a pattern. I mean, the first time you boxed Peter Buckley, after you lost the fight, before that, obviously losing the title, you became a world champion 5 months later. Now, the second time you boxed Peter Buckley, after losing a fight, you become world champion just 1 month later. I'm starting to think Peter Buckley and Dudley, your brother, were some kind of good luck charms.
Well, Peter Buckley paid me a lovely compliment. I read somewhere that he said, out of everybody that he ever fought, he said he thought I was the most accurate, I think, the hardest puncher. So, which proves testament to my sort of technique, really. I used to pride myself in just doing the basic things right. So, it's a lovely compliment, and I do respect Peter Buckley immensely, because the amount of fights that guy's had is boys, I could never do it.
Yeah.
He made, all right, he was a habitual loser, but that was his job, that was his life, that was his living. He'd fight you at like a day's notice. He's one of those guys. But he was actually a very decent amateur boxer, Yeah. He beat Mark Tibbs in the amateur. I don't know if you're aware of that. He beat Mark Tibbs in the amateur.
Oh, I didn't know
in the amateurs, it was a very decent amateur. Peter Buckley was touted for big things in the amateurs, but amateur boxing and professional boxing are two different sports. Well, one's a sport and one's a business. So maybe he wasn't really cut up for the pros.
Yeah.
But no, I just I thank God for Peter Buckley or fighters like him that allowed me to progress in my career and gave me confidence in beating those guys and moving on. Yeah, I boxed Peter Buckley a couple of times.
Yeah.
So he was he's a good guy. I've got a lot of time for him.
Like I say, he had the 300 fights. He was only ever stopped 10 times, and it was to you twice. 2 of those 10 times. He's definitely an unsung hero. But that, just touching on that Benavidez win, obviously, you outpointed him over 12 rounds at the Lewisham Theatre. When you became a free-weight world champion there, and obviously even to this day in Britain, only 3 men have ever achieved this. Obviously, Ricky Burns being the most recent. What did that feel like?
Yeah.
Because that is a new level of making history. You're not just a world champion once or twice. This is it, to be on such a short list like that. It must have meant a hell of a lot.
Well, I know quite a lot of other world champions, first name basis, and some of the guys they pay me lovely compliments. Like Nazim Hamid paid me a lovely compliment. He once said to me, recently, I said to him, Naz, what's it like being undisputed world champion? Because that's what he was. He was a phenomenal fighter. He said, Duke, he said it's a lovely feeling. He said, but I don't know what it is to win world titles in multiple weight divisions, 3 weight divisions. And I just thought, that's quite a genuine thing to say. I mean, I don't know what it is to be undisputed, but he doesn't know what it is to move up in weight divisions. So I just think to myself, I'm so privileged to have had the people that I've had around me, and like my coach, Colin Smith, Dudley, obviously, Mickey Duff, who's the absolute catalyst in the whole of my career. If it wouldn't have been for Mickey Duff, nobody else could have done with me what he did, to be honest with you. Frank Warren didn't have the experience, I don't think, at that point to manoeuvre me, got me the right kind of fights, and, made me into a 3-8 world champion. And there wasn't anybody else on the scene that could have done that with me at the time, that had television, that could have took a chance with me. So I'm in quite a privileged position, really, because it's not only, many, other more well-known fighters have tried it. Chris Eubank tried it. Nigel Benn, I think, tried it. But, they never managed to pull it off. So, I mean, I'm so proud of myself. I can't not be.
No, you can't not be. You definitely can't, especially where you came from. It's an amazing achievement. But obviously, you touched on it earlier on in the interview. You mentioned about a fight where you'd lost but thought that you'd won. I'm guessing it must have been this one against Daniel Jimenez just 8 months later. A majority decision over 12. Looking back, I'm guessing you definitely felt like you should have got the nod that night.
I thought I nicked it. I thought, I don't want to sound like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to sound like I expected a hometown decision. But if they'd have given me the nod on that night, I'd have took it.
Yeah.
I'd have took it all day long. I don't really... I can't even... You know, he did put me down with a body shot, actually. And, you know, that's obviously what swung it in his favour, in my opinion. But I still think I just nicked it.
Yeah.
I think it's the only fight in the whole of my career. I think, like I say, if they'd have given me the nod and the wink, I'd have took it all day long, you know. But anyway, listen, it's history now. It's gone. He's never coming back. He went away. He came over here and took my title. Went back to Puerto Rico with it. You know, made a couple of good defences. I'm told. I've never actually seen him fight after our fight. So, you know, like I say, it's one of them things that. It's one of them fights. It's the only fight in my career that I think I actually regret losing. You know, I regret it. I don't know what else I could have done right, but if I'd have got a decision on that night, like I say, I think I'd have gone, thank you very much. I'll have that one.
Yeah. No, he went on to box Marco Antonio Barrera. He lost his title to him, obviously. But
yeah,
you know,
I'd have beaten Barrera. I'd have done him, mate.
After the Jimenez fight, though, you know, 3 wins against John Davison, Marcelo Rodriguez, and Mark Hargreaves, and then you did try for number 4 up at Feather, Steve Robinson for the WBO World Featherweight title, but perhaps a little step too far now, looking back.
Bridge too far, and also. I think that I never really believed I was a world-class featherweight. I believed in every fight I had previous, flyweight, bantamweight, super bantamweight, I believed I was world-class. But I lacked the confidence going into the Robinson fight that I was actually a world-class, legitimate featherweight. I met Steve Robinson after he stopped... what's that kid's name? Sean's. What's the guy's name? What's the kid from St Albans?
Ooh, you're gonna test me here.
I forget his name. I forget the kid's name. Sean Murphy.
Okay. After
he stopped Sean Murphy, I met Steve Robinson. I was at that fight, and I was doing some analytic stuff with ITV. Actually, they asked me to come and do a thing, and I sat down next to him at ringside. It was like a welterweight sitting next to a bantamweight. He was fucking huge. I thought to myself, shit, how does he make the weight? He's got to be struggling. I got half a chance because he was just so big. And I thought to myself, I had half a chance, but like I say, in essence, I look back now and I think, you know, I wouldn't have been saying to myself I got half a chance. And any fight I had before that, I never look at it and think, oh, you know, I got half a chance of winning. I was either going to win or I wasn't going to win. I was as black and white as that, to be honest with you. But anyway, listen, the Robinson fight, I was doing okay. I did okay for about 6 rounds. And then at the end of the 7th round, I sat down. I was just going through a divorce at this time as well. And I sat down at the end of the 7th round, and I can remember seeing the judge's face right in my face, saying to me, Mr. McKenzie, this is what's going to happen in the divorce case I was going through. And my concentration had gone. Right there and then, my concentration had gone. And I threw a shot, and he slipped it, and he paid me. And then I was so angry, because if they'd have given me like a 15 count, I'd have been okay. 15 seconds later, I was as right as, you know, when I got back down to the changing room, I was as right as rain. You know, I just winded me so badly, and I just didn't recover, and that was it, really. And that really signalled the end, I think, of my sort of world title aspirations.
Yeah,
but again, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
No, I'm just going to say, you know, I've challenged in 4 weight divisions for four world championships. That would have been something to really. That would have been quite an elitist thing to do. I don't think there'll ever be another British fighter that can win 4 world titles in different weight divisions. I'm not saying I did. Obviously, I didn't. But I've had the privilege of challenging at least for 4 world titles, and I've won 3 out of the 4. So, you know, that ain't bad. I I'll take that.
Definitely. And of course, after that one, obviously you boxed Mehdi Labdouni, but again, people probably wouldn't have known back then, but obviously he held a win over Steve Robinson early on in his career as well, didn't he? So, to lose to a guy that had beaten the guy you'd lost to in the previous fight, you lost on points over 12 for the EBU European. And then, just 4 final fights, 3 wins, obviously. The final fight against Santiago Alcantara, I mean, that was...
Santiago Rojas.
Rojas, yeah. I think he's got 2 surnames.
Rojas.
I think he's got 2 surnames.
Yeah, probably.
Double.
Yeah,
it might be a bit of a double barrel, but
yeah.
I mean, was it tough? Was it tough retiring on a loss like that after the career you'd had, Duke?
No, it wasn't tough. I should never. This might sound like an excuse. Well, no, it's not an excuse. I should never have been in there on the night. I'd lost my brother Dudley in '95 to a suicide, and I hadn't. My heart wasn't where it should have been. My head really wasn't where it should have been. I was clutching at straws, and I just. My brother said to me, get yourself a day job and get back out there and, you'll be fine, and one thing and another. And I was like, but boxing's all I do. Boxing's all I really know. And, promote me for a fight. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And, the money was shit. The fight was shit. Everything about the whole process was shit, to be honest with you. Not because I lost. I shouldn't have been there. Yeah. I just shouldn't have been there. It's, it's as simple as that, really. And when Rojas caught me with a shot, listen, I promise you, I've been hit with harder shots in sparring, but he caught me with a shot. He hurt, don't get me wrong, he hurt me. It was more of a buzzing shot than, oh, fuck, I'm going over, that kind of a shot. And then when I went down, I looked at the referee take up the count, and I just thought, you know what, you can count to 100, I ain't getting up. I've had enough. I thought, fuck this, I've had enough, mate. I'm going to stay down and just take this one, and that'll be me. And that's pretty much how it was. I quit, basically. I quit. Yeah. So that's not. I don't want to take nothing away from the victory from that guy Rojas, but it just wasn't. I wasn't right. Yeah. I wasn't right. I'm probably still not right today, to be honest with you. I'm a little bit gone. We're all a little bit gone. I think a lot of boxers have got a few psychological problems, one way or another.
But just coming...
listen, it is what it is. Sorry.
No, just coming down to the last couple of questions, really, Duke. I like to ask this one sure. whenever we discuss an entire career like this. Did you have any regrets, looking back now, have you got any regrets about anything in your career at all?
No, not one.
That's the best answer.
I got no. I ain't got a regret. How could I have a regret? I've been a 2-time British champion. I've been a European champion. I've challenged for 2 European titles. No, I wasn't successful, and a 3-weight world champion. I haven't got one regret.
No, that's good to hear. That's the best way, like I say. And is there anyone that you perhaps wish you'd have had a chance to fight back in your career, but you didn't? Preferably from your era, but if not, any era from history. Is there anyone out there that you'd have liked to test yourself against?
Yeah, I'd love to have tested myself against Orlando Canizales, who was the IBF champion, Gavi's brother. That's where I wanted to go. That's the direction I wished I had gone, but it didn't happen. So, but that was my night. The Canizales fight was my best ever performance, but not my hardest fight. Yeah, it was my best performance. The Jacob fight is my hardest fight, but the Canizales fight is that's got to be my finest hour.
Okay.
Yeah, that's got to be my finest hour.
And I just want to ask also, you're I'm guessing you're happy in life now with the way, like I say, things have turned out and what you're getting up to now. Obviously, you're doing some work with ITV. You still running your own boxing gym?
I've just about to open a new one.
Okay.
About to open a new gym in Croydon, my hometown. Can't wait. Really excited about that. I've got 3 amazing kids. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a little house that I live in, which I'm really happy with. I haven't really got any major complaints, to be honest with you. Listen, there's some things that happen in your life that you never forget, both good and bad. Yeah. I'll never forget. I'm never gonna I have to live with the loss of my brother to the day I die. That's just something I have to live with. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't bring him back. That's the hard part of my life. But on the plus side, there are more good things happening than bad things happening, or bad things that have happened. So I've got a lot to be grateful for. I thank God I can open my eyes every morning, have a shit and a shave. I can still feed myself. I'm not blowing bubbles. Life could be a lot worse. So, I know a lot of boxers that aren't in a good place. I know a lot of champions that are not in a good place. And I would never badmouth anybody, and I've got time for everybody. But I just wish these guys would, reach out and touch and get the help they need. And it's a little bit sad, really. But what can you do? You're only responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're only responsible for yourself. So that's all I can be, is responsible for me.
Yeah.
Really.
And just tell me about this gym you're opening. Just give me a couple more words on it. Whereabouts in Croydon is it, Duke?
Yeah, I'm opening a new gym in South Croydon.
Okay.
Like I say, it's like my hometown. Croydon is my hometown. And I'm just doing like boxing technique training. That's what I call it. It's not boxercise, because my boxing is based on traditional boxing. Yeah. But it's non-contact. Men and women, boys and girls. But my other gym, I had like 200 kids coming at the gym. It was just absolutely fantastic, and it's kind of like my way of giving back. I get a lot more personal satisfaction from training the youth, the kids, than I do the adults, because the kids, all they're looking for is a little bit of leadership. They're looking for someone to look up to, someone to tell them, don't do it this way, try it that way. You show kids combinations now, and they just lose their mind. Boys and girls, boxing is very, very fashionable. And listen, we've got a lot to be thankful for great role models for like Anthony Joshua. Looks good, talks good, carries himself well. Obviously, media trained. He never says anything out of sorts or out of character. A lot of these young kids are looking up to him, and then they're going, I want to try this boxing. And fortunately, maybe it's because of him. I don't know. That's why I'm getting such an interest, so much interest from a lot of young kids. And I can't say I'll never train. I can't say I'll never train a boxer. I do a lot of work with my son. I've got a son that's boxing at the minute, and I do a lot of work with my little Ellis. He's doing really well. So, but I don't know if I'll ever train anybody on a professional level or anything like that. It doesn't really interest me, to be honest with you. Maybe it's because I know what goes into it, and I've never met anybody with that sort of commitment like what I've got, or like what I had, I should say. So, And
when's
you can never say never.
Yeah, you can never say never for sure. And when's the gym looking at opening, Duke?
January. Yeah, January next year. Wicked. Yeah, Jan 2020.
Wicked. All right.
Jan 2020.
Excellent. And just finally, Duke, if you've just got any closing words at all for our listeners, just before we let you go, if you just want to sign out by saying or sending a final little message.
Well, I want to wish everybody a happy New Year and a happy Christmas, and don't be afraid to drink in moderation. Be true to yourself, and live a happy life.
Absolutely.
That's all you can do, yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, Duke, it has been an absolute pleasure discussing your entire career. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful Christmas yourself and an even better New Year. Hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. No real news to go over, just the small fact that it's just basically been confirmed once again. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, the rematch set to take place February 22nd. It was a date that had been talked about for months, really. So we always thought it was going to be on that date. It's just been once again confirmed or reconfirmed or whatever. And yeah, that is going to be the date. So no real point in discussing too much more about it. That is the date. But let's move on now to the end of year awards for various different things, Fighter of the Year, stuff like that. We're going to also discuss the ones that our listeners, our followers on Twitter sent in. I'm going to start with Fighter of the Year. Now, it was a little bit confusing because I did my top 3 fighters of 2019. I also did a list for young fighters of 2019, and to be honest, there's a couple of them that could have been switched, because one of my top fighters of 2019 is still a young guy. I think he's just turned 22 or 23. So, you know, he could have gone in the young fighters, and one of the young fighters could have gone into the fighter of the year. I hope that's not confusing. But anyway, I'm going to discuss here my best KO of the year, favourite KO of the year, best fighter of 2019, best fight of 2019, best young fighter, best upset, and best British fighter and prospect of the year, most improved fighter, stuff like that. So here we go. Let's start with the juicy one, I suppose. Let's start with fighter of the year. Ayaz, I'm going to come to you first on that one, actually.
My fighter of the year has to be Saul Canelo Alvarez.
And, I mean, it's quite obvious what your answer is going to be to this question, but, you know, what was the best part of his 2019? Obviously, he had a fantastic one.
I mean, he fought, in 2018, he fought Triple G, Gennady Golovkin twice. First getting a draw, second beating him on points. Afterwards, yeah, he went and unified the division. He went and won the IBF championship belt against Danny Jacobs. Right, okay. So after that, in May, coming November time, he stepped up to light heavyweight and knocked out Sergey Kovalev to become a 4-weight division. Now that is what you call fighter of the year. Saul Canelo Alvarez, this guy has not ducked anyone. He's fought everyone. He's fought every person, and you have to give him credit for that. So for that, yeah, for beating Danny Jacobs, a top fighter, very, very good fight, and also beating Sergey Kovalev, a light heavyweight champion, who, for me, Saul Canelo Alvarez should be a 160-pound fighter. So I have to give credit for my opinion. Saul Canelo Alvarez is my fight of the year.
Yeah, like I say, a very popular answer there. Fighter of the year. This one is from @OscarCortez30. I don't think I've ever interacted with him before, but anyway, he sends in fighter of the year, Canelo. Ricey_SUFC, he sends in fighter of the year. He's given it to Teofimo Lopez. Yeah, definitely an argument for that one there. Luigi Pelosi, he says Canelo for fighter of the year. Tuba TJ, shout out to Tuba TJ in Hawaii, likes to play the tuba. I got a BoxHard Podcast t-shirt shipped out to him, and he sent us a cracking picture with it on, by the way. He has said fighter of the year, Naoya Inoue, definitely there, thereabouts. Nathan Muse, he says Josh Warrington, but not sure how his calendar works out, but he's flying. Definitely, but I don't think he's had the best 2019 at all. I mean, he's had the real close fight with Kid Galahad. That one could have gone either way. And, of course, he beat that Sofian Takouchi. He just annihilated him, and he was really no great shakes. Yeah, I think that's it for that one. But, yeah, for me, like I said, I've given a top 3. I'm going Canelo, number 1 for sure. He gets the number 1 spot for me. I mean, I didn't really give Jacobs much of a chance against him when they boxed earlier on in the year in May, but that's just because I know how good Canelo is. But Jacobs, whether you like it or not, is one of the best middleweights in the world, and Canelo beat him, in my opinion, with relative ease. And then, of course, like we say, he moved up in weight, and let's be honest, he shouldn't ever be boxing at 175. He's only 5'8", and he got in there against one of the hardest pound-for-pound punchers in the sport, and he didn't even get rocked, he didn't even get hurt, and he managed to knock the champion out. So for me, that was super impressive, and that is what just puts him head and shoulders above the rest of the fighters. In second place, I've gone with Naoya Inoue. You know, he destroyed Emmanuel Rodriguez in just 2 rounds. That was super duper impressive, honestly. That was absolutely unbelievable, that win there earlier on in the year. And he didn't really look a monster when he boxed Nonito Donaire, but he still answered a lot of questions that night. He ticked a lot of boxes, and he gave us one of the fights of the year. And actually, I'm going to get onto my fights of the year. I'm going to just spoil it now. That was my fight of the year right there. He dominated a legend in Nonito Donaire, and of course he became the World Boxing Super Series champion. And in third place, the bronze medal, I'm giving it to Teofimo Lopez. Again, I've got 2 lists. I've got young fighters of the year, and I've got fighters of the year. He could have been in either one. You know, I've kind of, the young fighters of the year are just a little notch down. So rather than put him at the very top of that one in first place, I've decided to put him as third out of everything, all categories. Young fighters, old fighters, whatever. I've put him right up there. So number 3 for me, Teofimo Lopez. He boxed 4 times in 2019. He was very, very active considering the opposition he faced. Obviously, he knocked out Diego Magdaleno. He knocked out Edis Tatley. He got some stick for going the distance against the undefeated Japanese fighter, Nakatani, who is still a bit of an unknown quantity. He's a tough guy. And then, of course, he capped his year off by winning the IBF world title in devastating fashion by destroying a solid, legit fighter in Richard Comey. And that just doesn't happen to Richard Comey. So for me, he is super, super special. That's my fighters of the year. Moving on now to the young fighter of the year. I know, Ayaz, you didn't really focus on that too much, so I'm going to just fill in the gaps here. My favourite young fighter of the year, number 1 for me, Emmanuel Navarrete. He was going to be my third on the fighter of the year, but I decided to switch him from third place in fighter of the year and put him to first place of young fighters of the year because he's still a young guy. Teofimo Lopez, I gave that third spot and knocked him off the top of the young fighters of the year. This young fighters of the year thing, by the way, is for fighters under 25 years of age. But like I say, Navarrete, he sprung to notability after dethroning Isaac Dogbe in 2018. The rematch took place in May of 2019. So he got started in his year quite late, in the 5th month of 12, in May. And he was able to repeat the dominance, and actually this time, he forced Dogbe's corner to throw the towel in the very last round. So he closed the book there on the Dogbe saga, and after that he went on to have 3 more fights in 2019. He stopped Francisco de Vaca in 3 rounds, a guy who was unbeaten in 20. He then became the first man to stop Juan Elorde, a Filipino fighter who had been on a almost 8-year win streak, and then he finished the year by beating and becoming the first man to stop Francisco Horta. His opposition wasn't the greatest, but from May to December he boxed 4 fighters and stopped them all, and 3 of them within just 4 rounds. It's crazy to think that he's still only 24 years of age, Navarrete. I'd love to see those unifications with the likes of Daniel Roman and Ray Vargas. They need to happen in 2020, hopefully. In second place, though, I've given it to Mario Barrios. 3 fights he had this year. A knockout against Richard Zamora. Nothing too impressive about that one, I guess, in retrospect. The next fight, a KO against Juan Velasco in just 2 rounds. We got to remember, Velasco went 8 rounds with Regis Prograis before being knocked out, but he was able to have a lot of success against Prograis, and that made the Velasco-Barrios fight a possible banana skin for Barrios, but no, he absolutely destroyed Velasco. And then, of course, to cap it all off, he boxed Batir Akhmedov, who was a real good amateur. Barrios, his performance that night was just incredible. It was another fight of the year contender that a lot of people are forgetting because we had so many brilliant fights this year. He started great in the fight. He scored an early knockdown. Akhmedov set a crazy pace in the mid-rounds and was probably on his way to win the fight. And then a vital knockdown in the final few seconds of the last round for Barrios probably just about swung the scorecards in his favour, and he became the WBA world champion at just 24 years of age. He's had a crack in 2019. And finally, in third place, Young Fighter of the Year, I've given it to Brandon Figueroa. A very active year, 4 fights. He started the year off by destroying Moises Flores in 2 rounds. Flores had never been stopped. He only had 1 loss, which was on points to the established and unified world champion, Daniel Roman. He then beat Yomfres Parejo for the interim WBA world title. He stopped Parejo there when former world champions like Ryan Burnett and Zanat Zakhayanov couldn't do it. And then he boxed Javier Chacon and knocked him out in 4 rounds, quicker than Isaac Dogbe and Jamie McDonnell could do it. And remember, like I say, he's only 22 years of age. He just turned 23 about 3 days ago, something like that. And his 4th fight of the year was against Julio Ceja. Ceja was beating Rigondeaux in his fight before this one, before getting stopped by Rigondeaux. So a very, very good fighter, who apart from Lomachenko, by the way, has ever been outboxing Rigondeaux. Well, this guy was, and then he got stopped. But Ceja came into this fight against Figueroa, which was supposed to be at 122, super bantamweight. He came in at super featherweight, 2 weight divisions too heavy. Brandon Figueroa crazily enough, still went ahead with a fight. It ended in a split draw, so he wouldn't have been happy about the result, but still a remarkable 2019 for such a young warrior with a lot of heart and a lot of promise, Brandon Figueroa. So he gets my third place. British Fighter of the Year, Ayaz. I'm going to come to you on that one. Who's your British Fighter of the Year?
Of the year, there's only has to be one person, Josh Taylor. Because Josh Taylor, the reason why he entered the World Boxing Series and beat every single fighter he has had. For me, he's the unified lightweight division champion and light welterweight. But what I gotta say, I gotta give him credit because he's fought on everyone and he's beaten all the top fighters.
Yeah, I'm going to give that one to Josh Taylor as well. It's clear. It's head and shoulders above anything else any other fighter in Britain has done this year. Again, he could have been right up there actually in the Fighter of the Year list, but I've given a little bit of shine to some guys that perhaps wouldn't have got a mention and won't get a mention on other platforms or whatever. But yeah, Josh Taylor, he won the World Boxing Super Series. He only had 2 fights, so he wasn't that active, but he beat 2 undefeated world champions in those 2 fights. Both fights were brilliant fights. Both wins have now catapulted him right to the top of the division, and for me, he is the number 1 fighter at 140. Some will say Jose Ramirez, of course, but until the fight happens, or even if the fight doesn't happen, Josh Taylor for me absolutely smashed it, and he's probably our best fighter in Britain actually. So a brilliant 2019 for him. Prospect of the year, I'm going to quickly fly through this one. I'm wondering if I asked this to anyone else actually. Ricey_SUFC says Diego Pacheco. That's an interesting one. Very interesting. There's loads and loads and loads of people to choose. I'm surprised he went with him. Prospects, someone, Tuba TJ went with Dubois, if he can still be considered a prospect. If not, he'd give it to Effie Ajagba. Yep, that's a good shout there. Yeah, I think that's it, really. My prospect of the year, it's only one guy. I mean, it's only one guy, clearly for me. Virgil Ortiz Jr. In my opinion, he's on another level, head and shoulders above the rest of the prospects. 4 wins this year, 4 KOs. He's now 15-0 with 15 knockouts. That 100% KO ratio has remained intact. His 4 wins. I mean, Jesus Barayan, he made the Mexican quit on his stall after 5 rounds. His best win was probably in the fight after that. He became the first man to stop Mauricio Herrera. It only took him 3 rounds. You've got to remember Herrera's been the distance with guys like Hank Lundy, Frankie Gomez, Danny Garcia, Saddam Ali, Mike Alvarado, Jose Benavidez Jr., Ruslan Provodnikov. That was a proper statement there, in my opinion, for Ortiz Jr. to get him out of there. His next win came against former world title challenger Antonio Orozco. Unified world champion Jose Ramirez, who we just mentioned, had beaten Orozco on points, but Ortiz was able to stop him in 6 rounds. He had him down 3 times in the fight. And then, of course, his final win of 2019 was a knockout over Brad Solomon. He became the first man to stop Solomon. It took Ortiz just 5 rounds. And believe me, if there's any betting shop at all that will take a bet for Ortiz to become a world champion by 2021, put your house on it, my friends, because that is a dead certain in my opinion. This guy is real legit. Most improved fighter, I've given it to John Ryder. I mean, I didn't ask the listeners or Twitter about it, and I didn't really give it too much thought, to be honest, but I think it has to be John Ryder. Only 2 fights in 2019, but a knockout against a solid prospect in Bilal Akawi on the Canelo Jacobs undercard. Again, Akawi was being tipped to be a real one to watch in the future, perhaps a future world champion, and he absolutely smashed him to pieces. And then he arguably beats Callum Smith, who many regarded before the fight as the best super middleweight in the world. And again, this is a guy in John Ryder that got knocked out at British title level once upon a time. He has come on leaps and bounds and is the most improved fighter in world boxing. So a big shout out to John Ryder. And I've given us a second place on this one as well. I've not given a third place, but the second place goes to Jamel Herring. It's great to see such a good guy become a world champion this year in 2019. He has suffered a couple of losses, but since teaming up with the Terence Crawford training team, like guys like Red Spikes and Brian McIntyre, he's totally changed as a fighter, and he boxed out of his skin to win the title against Masayuki Ito. he was a big underdog, and then, of course, in his first defence, he defended against Lamont Roach Jr., who was an undefeated fighter, a guy who had a good amateur career as well. So Jamel Herring's 2019 was a real feel-good story, and hopefully he continues things in 2020, and he continues in the same manner because he wants those big fights, believe me. I'd love to see him over here in the UK, actually. Yeah, so that's that one. Let's go with upset of the year now, Ayaz. I'm going to come to you on that.
We all know where that upset. We all know where that's going to be. That one is when Andy Ruiz Jr. upset the whole odds and beat Anthony Joshua and knocked him out. Got the fight stopped in his 8th round. That was the biggest upset. That's like the biggest upset since when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. So everyone knows that was the biggest upset I've seen so far of 2019.
So far, well, that's the end of 2019, obviously, but. Yeah, Ruiz beating Joshua. Ricey _SUFC goes with that. Ruiz versus Joshua 1. That's from Luigi Pelosi. Ruiz versus Joshua 1. That's from Tuba TJ. I think Nathan Moose has also gone with Ruiz, and yeah, pretty much everyone went with Ruiz there. Did anyone else say that one? Just trying to look through these. It's getting a bit confusing. They're all jumbled up. Yeah, I think that is... Oh, yes. Someone else at Oscar Cortez 30. He also went with that one. Yeah, everyone's going with that. You have to go with that, to be honest. I mean, you know, to think that Andy Ruiz Jr. had boxed 5 weeks prior to the fight. He boxed, what's the guy's name again? I think he made him quit on his stall. What's his name again?
Dimitrenko.
Yeah, Alexander Dimitrenko. He beats him on an undercard, and 5 weeks later he's in the ring, Madison Square Garden, against Anthony Joshua. You know, he only had a real limited amount of time to get ready for the fight, and just the way it played out, I mean, you know, it was such a dramatic fight, you know. Obviously, he got dropped, he got back up. We didn't do an award for round of the year, but that would have probably been the best round of the year, where he got dropped and then got back up and dropped Joshua. It was just an unbelievable fight, and it's a shame the rematch was such a bad one, you know, in terms of the entertainment value, but yeah, that has to be it. But also, I'm going to give a little mention also, a fight that not many people are mentioning. Can't remember who said this one, but yeah, definitely this fight here, the 2016 Olympic gold medalist Robisi Ramirez turned pro on August the 10th. I think I was in the States actually at the time, and he boxed on an undercard. I think it was in Philadelphia, near where I was, and he boxed Adan Gonzalez, who had a record of 4-2 with 2 draws, and he was able to actually score the split decision over 4 rounds. So a loss on his pro debut for the gold medalist there, Robisi Ramirez, and he was a sensational amateur. So for him to lose like that, you know, to a guy he's supposed to completely walk over, that was such a shock. He was also on the canvas in the very first round, so that one deserves a real shout as well. But just for the, you know, for the magnitude of the biggest fight, you know, one of the biggest fights of the year, Joshua and Ruiz, you know, being for the heavyweight titles and stuff like that, it gets much more magnification, if you like. You know, we're all looking at that one under the microscope. What have we done? So that's the young fighters, that is the best British fighter, that's the prospects, that's the most improved fighters. We are now left with the best KOs of 2019. See, this is one where I'm kind of struggling a little bit. I find it hard to really choose one. There's a few. I actually really liked Archie Sharp's knockout against Declan Geraghty in a fight he was losing, and then of course Declan Geraghty walked right into a left hook, and Archie Sharp absolutely slept him. That's what I was trying to say. It was a brutal knockout, that one. Obviously, Sam Maxwell, when he was boxing against that journeyman, I think it was, and the journeyman had dropped him, and the journeyman was dancing around and, you know, just showboating and all sorts of things like that, and then he gets knocked out. I think it was in the last round by Sammy Maxwell. Unbelievable knockout, that one. Real satisfying. Wilder vs Brazil, again, that one was sent in by a lot of people. Tuba TJ sent that one in. Canelo's knockout over Alvarez at Oscar Cortez says. Ricey SUFC also gave it to Wilder. he says the knockout, both of his knockouts this year were insane. The Ortiz was special after losing every round. Who else sent theirs in? Just give me 1 sec here. Nathan Muse says Charlo versus Kota. Do you know what? I can't even remember watching that one. Oh, I'll have to watch that back. I really do apologise there, Nathan Muse. I'm sure I watched it, but I've just completely forgotten about it. Tuba TJ says, yeah, KO of the year, Wilder over Brazil. I think I said that. Luigi Pelosi, Wilder against Brazil as well. Yep, Rice, SUFC, Wilder on Brazil. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way he set it up. The one thing that it was a brilliant knockout, but the one thing that kind of... that I'm not giving it all the credit for is he set it up so clearly. Like he just found him with the jab. It was just a touching jab just to measure that distance, and it was the 1-2 straight down the pipe. And Brazil almost saw the shot coming, but he was throwing his own shots, I think, at the same time, and he just had to kind of blink and go, "Oh crap, it's gonna hit me!" Bang, and that was it. And he really did fold him in two right there. So yeah, definitely a brilliant knockout. But I like the shock knockouts, like Archie Sharp's one against Declan Garrity. Sammy Maxwell's one against the guy that he fought. But for me, my knockout of the year, again, we've probably left out so many. So if you didn't send it in, shame on you, because we needed a lot more variety sent in, but not that many people sent theirs in. But I've gone with Chisora against Spilka. That was a brutal knockout right there. Ayaz, I know what one you're going with.
Yes, I'm going with Daniel Dubois versus Fujimoto, which happened last week. That knockout was disgusting. The way that right hand dropped Fujimoto right on the floor. It reminded me of like Deontay Wilder fought Dominic Brazil, but I think this was more. I thought this was more for a dangerous knockout than the Deontay Wilder one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brutal one. Like I say, I was there for that one. But yeah, a good knockout. Like I say, both men were exchanging right hooks, and Dubois got there first. You don't hook with a hooker, they say. And finally, getting on to the best fights of 2019, just before we wrap it all up. I have a list of brilliant fights for 2019, but let's start with the ones that were sent in from our listeners / Twitter followers. This one's from @OscarCortez30. He says, oh, this is a good one, actually. This is a really good one. I almost forgot this one here. There's been so many this year. Like I say, we've been spoiled. But he says, Triple G against Derevianchenko. That was a brilliant fight, Ayaz, if you remember correctly. Ricey SUFC says Spence vs. Porter. It was an absolute belter, along with Inoue vs. Donaire and Taylor vs. Prograis. I think you'll struggle to find better than those for fight of the year. Definitely, I agree with all three of those ones there. This one comes in from @ColeSmith611. He says Davies versus Ritson. Yeah, that was a great fight as well. Nathan Muse says Taylor versus Prograis. Tuba TJ says Pacquiao versus Furman. That's an interesting one, actually, Tuba. That is an interesting one there, because I remember that being a good fight. Obviously, Furman started off really slow, but then he came into it in the later rounds. Furman, honestly, so underappreciated. I really like Furman. I've had a soft spot for him for a long time. Luigi Pelosi says J-Rock versus Jarrett Hurd. That was a brilliant fight again. Brilliant fight. Ricey also says Inoue versus Donaire. Yeah, for me, I mean, I've got a list here. Taylor versus Prograis, definitely one of them. Hurd versus Williams for sure. A lot of people forgot about this one, but Daniel Roman against TJ Doheny. What a fight that was. Obviously, Joshua Ruiz won. Donaire versus Inoue, for me, that was fight of the year. That's probably fight of a few years. I loved that fight there. Spence versus Porter as well. Like I say, Triple G versus Derevianchenko. Hooker versus Ramirez was okay. Perhaps I'm forgetting some, Ayaz, so I need you to help me here. But also, Gvozdyk versus Baturbiev was a brilliant fight as well.
I got one fight, and I know you might disagree with me, but you know when Tyson Fury fought Otto Wallin?
Oh, Ayaz, really?
The cut. It was because of the cut.
Yeah.
And obviously, that seemed interesting of that fight. But it was a good fight. I wouldn't say fight of the year. For me, fight of the year has got to be Taylor versus Prograis, because I think that was the best fight of the year. I think that year that lived up to the expectations. It was a very good fight, and obviously it was the British man as well. And like I said, that was a brilliant fight. But there was also, who was it? Who was it? Oh, yes. Dillian White versus Oscar Rivas.
Yeah, that was a good fight. That was definitely a good fight. Like I say, there's been so many this year. I'm trying to find a list somewhere of loads of the best ones because there's been loads. I feel like we're leaving loads out. Just trying to have a look here. There's a list I found online here. Jarrett Hurd, Julian Williams, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, Adam Kalnacki versus Chris Arreola. I didn't actually see that fight. I can't believe it. I didn't actually see that fight. I think we had Adam Kalnacki on the show like the next week or whatever, but I actually missed that one there. But yeah, there was lots and lots and lots of good fights this year. But for me, Inoue Donaire, that was just a brilliant, brilliant fight. But again, it's not too late. We can still discuss any late entries if you have any. Send them in to us on Twitter so you can cover any that we've missed. I mean, we've talked about British Fighter of the Year. We've talked about the fights of the year. But if we've missed any good knockouts or any good fights, then send them in and we will mention them on next week's show. By the way, next week's show will be out on the Wednesday rather than the Thursday. So look out for that one next Wednesday, which I believe is the 8th, I think, or the 7th. I can't remember. But yeah, that's it. So thank you all for listening to this week's show once again. That is it for everything really on this show. That wraps everything up. Thank you all for listening, and once again, for the last time, Happy New Year.